there's something interesting in the United States Constitution. It's called Article 5. And it allows for a couple of ways to get an amendment. Now, one is 2/3 of Congress calls for an amendment and then 3/4 of the states ratify. A second way, as I've explained to you before, and what Wolfpack is trying to do, is to get 2/3 of the states to call for a convention for a specific amendment, right? Now, there's a problem with that because Congress still has to be involved a tiny bit. Now, we're not asking for their help, we're not asking for any favors, and we think they're fundamentally corrupt. But the one thing they gotta do is count. We're not asking for much, we're just asking for them to count. Now, you need 2/3 of the states, or 34 states. So somebody in Congress has gotta go, okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and get to 34 and go, oh wow, you called for a convention, you should have one, okay? And then whatever comes out of that convention, again, 3/4 of the states, 38 states would then have to ratify. That would be the second step, right? So a guy out of Hawaii, Dan Marks, thought back in 2011, well, it's kind of unfortunate that they're not counting. Why don't I ask them to count? What an unbelievably revolutionary thought. It turns out no one had asked them. So Dan made an effort to go and talk to the House and talk to the Senate and send them letters specifically asking for them to count. Now look, this has been an issue for a while, but apparently no one actually went to them and said, hey, this is a request by a United States citizen. See, this is what the doubters and the skeptics and the cynics never understand. You never know what you can get unless you try. So he's got a whole website here, and it's article5.org, and he explains the whole process, and he's part of the process. He didn't sit at home, he didn't sit on his couch and say, wouldn't it be great if they counted? He wrote them a letter. He called them. He's got them on record. He recorded the call. So what happened in that? Well, at some point in the process, around the year 2013, he wound up talking to our executive director at Wolfpack, Ryan Clayton. And Ryan said to him, no, look, your efforts are awesome, and you're an American hero for doing this. Somebody's got to do it, and we think you could have some success. But get it more on the record. Write them a specific letter, get them to respond to that letter. He took Ryan's suggestions, and Dan did all the legwork, worked so hard at this. And so what he did was he sent a letter to the U.S. House Clerk and to the parliamentarian in the Senate. And there's his letter, and he made it all official. And then he followed up with them, and he said, hey, did you guys wind up getting that letter, and what's your response? Well, they did respond to him. And the clerk's office said that legal advisor Kirk Boyle admitted that Congress had never counted any of the applications. It's been about 226 years that people have been sending in applications to call for a convention. There's 700 overall. Now, the reason that we don't have a convention is twofold. One is that 34 of them, or whatever 2/3 was as the country was growing, had not called for a specific convention. You can't just say general convention. This is not to rewrite the Constitution. This is not a constitutional convention in that sense. It's very specific. What amendments are you proposing? So they don't have 34 on a single topic. The other reason they didn't call for a convention is because no one counted, right? Now, several times they got very close, and actually it led Congress to panic and call for the amendment anyway. That's how we got the 17th Amendment, the direct election of senators. Congress, well, they were 2 states away, and Congress said, okay, don't have the convention. All right, we'll pass the amendment on our own. So that's an interesting route. But in this case, they're like, my God, we looked into it, and you're absolutely right, Dan. And so what they did was they instructed the clerk of the House to move forward the request and move it to the House Judiciary Committee, okay? And they did. And there's a subcommittee on the Constitution, and they moved it there. And then guess what happened? Representative Steve Stivers of Ohio, who's a Republican, by the way. Republicans and Democrats care about the Constitution. They care about issues that are central to this country. And he said, well, you're right. It's in the Constitution. We can't keep ignoring it. It would be a breach of our duty that we are sworn to uphold to protect the Constitution. We can't just ignore a part of it for 225 years and say, we don't care. We do care. So he proposed an amendment, and it passed to the rules of the House. So now the new rules are, yes, we will go back and count all the ones from the past, and we will count all the ones going forward. Now, for our purposes at Wolfpack, well, that's fantastic. We've already got 3 on the board. We've got California, Vermont, and Illinois, who have all called for a convention on the issue of getting money out of politics, because we don't believe that this corrupt Congress will do it on their own. But it turns out, even with the most corrupt Congress we've ever had, If you're a real citizen who cares about this country, who's a patriot, whether you're on the right or the left, and you actually try, you can get amazing things done. And by the way, if you're dubious about whether it was really Dan Mark's effort here, it says it in the congressional record. Here, let me show you that. So that is quite literally, as you can see, the congressional record. And it says under Clause 3 of Rule 12, the Speaker presented a petition of Dan Marks from Hilo, Hawaii, relative to a letter regarding methods of proposing amendments, which was referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. And going forward, that rule has passed, and from now on, all of our actions will count. Just one guy in Hawaii who decided, hey, I'm going to get this done no matter what. Yes, we helped him at Wolfpack. Yes, it was Republicans who also helped in getting this passed. But that's what happens if you try. Never believe the doubters. They're the ones sitting at home who want an excuse for their failures. Believe the guys like Dan Marks who are American heroes who believe that you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Come join us. Let's get that amendment together. Let's clean up our politics. wolf-pack.com.